I found out by accident. Not through a dramatic confession, not through some tearful apology, through a locked metal box in the attic. I wasn't even looking for answers that day. I was looking for Christmas decorations. My adoptive parents had gone on a weekend trip, and I was house sitting, like I'd done 100 times before. The attic smelled like dust and old insulation, the kind of place where family history quietly rots in cardboard. That's when I saw it. A small gray locked box tucked behind old photo albums. It had my name on it. Not Sweetie, not a nickname, my full legal name. Curiosity isn't the right word for what I felt. It was something heavier, like my chest already knew what my hands hadn't touched yet. The key was taped to the bottom. They hadn't even tried that hard to hide it. Inside were documents, old hospital forms, a different birth certificate, one I had never seen before. Different parents, different country, different surname. And in the corner of the certificate was something embossed in faint gold, a crest, not decorative, official. I sat there on the attic floor staring at it, my hands shaking. I always knew I was adopted. That part was never a secret. But they told me it was simple, a young couple who couldn't handle the responsibility. That was the phrase my adoptive mother used. Couldn't handle me. But this was different. The surname printed under father wasn't random. I recognized it. Anyone who followed European politics would recognize it. It belonged to one of the oldest constitutional royal families in Eastern Europe. I actually laughed at first. It felt absurd, like a conspiracy theory. Then I kept reading. There were letters, legal correspondence, sealed agreements, payments, large ones. I realized something cold and precise in that moment. I wasn't given up. I was removed. The documents detailed a private relocation due to security concerns. My biological parents weren't reckless teenagers. They were public figures. My existence would have caused scandal, political complications, inheritance disputes. So I was placed quietly, carefully, strategically. And my adoptive parents had signed confidentiality agreements. My entire life, they let me believe I wasn't wanted, that I was lucky to be taken in, that I should be grateful. I thought about every time my adoptive father told me you'd have nothing without us. Every time my adoptive mother reminded me how expensive private school had been. Every argument where they said, "We saved you." Saved me. From what? I drove home that night in silence. My hands were steady now. The next morning, I confronted them. I placed the birth certificate on the kitchen table between us. My adoptive mother's face went white immediately. My adoptive father didn't speak for a full minute. "You weren't supposed to find that," he finally said. Not, "Let's explain," not, "We're sorry," just, "You weren't supposed to know." "Why?" I asked quietly. "Why did you let me believe I wasn't wanted?" My mother's voice trembled, but not from guilt, from fear. "It was safer," she whispered. "For who?" Silence. That's when the truth began to shift. They had been paid, not to raise me out of charity, but to disappear me. The stipend had continued for 18 years. Education, housing, discretion. They hadn't adopted me because they couldn't have children. They adopted me because I was part of a contract. And they never told me because telling me would have meant losing control. "You were a child," my father said defensively. "You didn't need to know." "I'm not a child anymore," I replied. That afternoon, I contacted the law firm listed in the documents. It took 3 days for someone to call me back. A calm, precise British accent on the other end. "We've been expecting this call," he said. Expecting, as if this was inevitable. He confirmed everything. My biological parents were not monarchs in the fairy tale sense. They were part of a reigning royal house with limited political power but enormous cultural influence. My birth had occurred during a period of instability. There were threats, internal disputes, questions of succession. I was the complication, and complications get handled quietly. They never stopped monitoring your well-being, the lawyer said carefully. Monitoring, as if I were an investment. I asked if they wanted to meet me. A pause. They've always wanted to. That was the part that shattered me, because my whole identity had been built on the idea that I wasn't chosen, wasn't kept, wasn't worth the risk. And now I was being told I was protected, hidden, strategically removed to keep me alive. I didn't know whether to feel angry or relieved. Probably both. When I told my adoptive parents I planned to meet them, my mother panicked. "They'll replace us," she said. Replace, as if this was about competition. This isn't about replacing you. It's about truth. For the first time in my life, I wasn't asking permission. A month later, I stepped off a plane into a private terminal in a city I'd only seen in history books. No cameras, no headlines, just two people standing a few feet away, waiting. They looked nothing like I expected. Not distant, not regal, not cold. They looked terrified. My biological mother cried before I even reached her. My biological father didn't say a word at first. He just held my hand, like he was confirming I was real. No crowns, no thrones, just consequences. Later that evening, as I stood in a private garden overlooking a skyline older than my country, I realized something powerful. Royalty wasn't the point. The point was choice. They hadn't chosen status over me. They had chosen safety. And my adoptive parents hadn't chosen love. They had chosen control. My entire life, I was told I should be grateful. Turns out, I was never the lucky one. They were, because I survived long enough to find the truth.